What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we have got a huge OTA to talk about. 9 cards getting changed. I've got them all here stacked on top of each other so we can go through them, and I'm also going to go over 10 decks that I think benefit from today's OTA. So we have got a lot to discuss. And first off is Fenris Wolf. A 2/3 becoming a 3/4 is a pretty big change for this card, especially because it's been paired with Wiccan a lot recently, and changing the energy cost of a card in your Wiccan deck can really throw off your curve in a way that is going to make that deck feel a lot different. I'm not sure what that deck will have to do to compensate by losing a 2-cost card in it. You're going to need to put another 2-cost card in the deck, and I haven't figured out exactly what that's going to be, so I'm not going to delve into Wiccan decks in the future. Those might take a little bit to recover. Fenris Wolf is just a lot weaker as a 3-cost card. It's mentioned in the OTA notes that you cannot now curve from Fenris Wolf into Negasonic Teenage Warhead, which was a particularly devastating and synergistic pair of cards that also led you nicely into a Wiccan on turn 4. Also, you can't play Fenris Wolf alongside Negasonic on turn 5, or Fenris Wolf alongside a Gladiator. Red Guardian, sure. You can't do that either. That one isn't as relevant. I'm doing a giveaway for PAX bundles. Stick around till the end of the video to find out how you can win. I bring up the potential turn 5 plays with Fenris Wolf because that's the last time you can play it and then activate it to get the most value out of this card. Like, you really don't want to play this card on the final turn, really ever. There are still some potential curves, like if you hit the Wiccan draw, then you can play Fenris Wolf alongside a Negasonic Teenage Warhead on turn 5, or you could potentially just be playing Fenris Wolf on turns, 3, 4, 5, and getting priority to then use your Negasonic Teenage Warhead, though a 3/4 is not really going to help you battle for priority. So there is some tension with that with Negasonic Teenage Warhead as well. I'm sure it will still have some success with both Gladiator, and then potentially also, like, it's very, very underexplored, but you can make your opponent discard cards in Marvel Snap. That's not really something that Fenris Wolf has done in a while. It was something that people were doing with it when it first came out, specifically with like Moon Knight. And I will say, before, you had the advantage where you could play Fenris Wolf on turn 2 and then Moon Knight on turn 3, and you wouldn't have to worry about discarding your card. Now, you don't have to worry about Moon Knight discarding Fenris Wolf because Fenris Wolf is an odd cost card. So you could potentially build a fully odd deck with also potentially Proxima, Midnight, and Swarm. That was something that people were doing with Moon Knight for a little bit. Maybe that could come back. I'm not super sure, but one thing that I think could potentially come back, and you might even say, wait, where did this even go? I did not realize that Hela had left. But I think that Fenris Wolf was putting an awkward tension on Hela decks for a little bit. This is the current flavor with Redshift and Agatha, but it doesn't need to be this build. It could be the build that I use to top 16 the Golden Gauntlet World Championship qualifier that didn't play Agatha and Redshift. And that is still, like, playing a Reanimator strategy when the best deck just has a really solid tech card in the form of Fenris Wolf feels really awkward. You're just taking some huge splash damage there for a way that doesn't feel like Fenris Wolf. I think makes the most sense when, like, you are actively trying to make your opponent discard or destroy their cards or whatever, and then you're getting them back with Fenris Wolf. When your opponent is just doing it themselves, and in some cases with this Agatha deck, like, they don't have any choice. I just played a Conquest match, actually. Maybe I probably won't throw a clip into this video. It'd be a little bit too much work for me, but my opponent, it was a conquest match, and they snapped. So I'm like, okay, you got the turn 2 redshift, and I just played my turn 2 Fenris Wolf and snapped back and then stole their Agatha, and there was literally nothing they could do about it because Agatha was controlling their turn. I mean, they could have retreated, but like, yeah, it just feels terrible when you are doing what your deck is supposed to be doing and then just taking splash damage from the best deck doing its thing. And to that extent, the other deck that takes some splash damage here is Bullseye, Dakin discard. Not as much, I would say, but I will say that this deck doesn't love to play against the Fenris decks either, just because potentially the Fenris is attacking them. They also have Red Guardian, yes, actually Red Guardian, and then you can also use Gladiator to like just totally disrupt things by making you discard cards randomly, and all of that is just like an awkward place to be, again, where the best deck just has a free hate card against you. So those are the first 2 decks that I'm recommending that definitely gain a lot of stock from this OTA. Discard in either capacity, be it Dakin with Bullseye or Hela without this wolf around as much. I think both of those are going to go up in stock a little bit. And Cannonball is also kind of grouped in with Fenris Wolf in this OTA. And I think that that's definitely fair. They're getting played alongside each other a lot recently, and they do have a lot of overlapping synergy. Cannonball also has some play outside of Fenris Wolf decks, specifically in like Clog decks, which I'll be honest, I am totally fine seeing Cannonball lose a point or 2 for Clog's sake. And I want to say, I didn't look this up beforehand. Maybe I will just type this in right now. SnapFan Cannonball. And on SnapFan, there's like a log of changes over time. But I believe that Cannonball, yes, it was briefly. So when it released, it was a 5/8. And then it went down to a 5/7, went back up to a 5/8, down to a 5/7, and then back up to a 5/8 again. And there were some other balances around those things, but it's been a 5/8 for almost a year and more or less been fine. And I think that there's been a lot of calls recently for Mercury to take more of the brunt of this rather than Cannonball. And the fact that they are keeping Mercury Cannonball in the game, I still think that that is going to be a very powerful combination. It's less powerful now. It will mean that you need like only 9 other points in that location. So if you have like, a bunch of 2/3s and then a 4 power card, you will actually win that location even if they cannonball you. And it means that just like the bar, it's fairly easy, I feel like, to get 9 power in a location among 3 cards, but it's still a reasonable commitment. And the fact that Mercury can move around, of course, could still potentially be annoying. But yes, Cannonball wasn't really seeing that much love as a 5/7 back before Mercury was out. Now that Mercury's out, it's kind of just like a totally different card than it was previously. But I think that Clog decks will definitely feel the 2 points off of Cannonball. It won't just guaranteed be able to win a location that's filled, which is what a Clog deck is trying to do. I'm not too upset about that, though, to be totally honest. So I don't really mind that one. And our next change here is another pretty just big card right now, I will say. And it's getting a little bit bigger even. Juggernaut is going from a 3/3 to a 4/5 and keeping the same ability. And yeah, this card is just way too good. I actually saw a lot of calls because Juggernaut is like a big boy, like canonically, right? It's just a big man. And I saw some calls for Juggernaut to just like fully embrace that. And I kind of liked the idea of it switching stats totally with Arrow having Arrow become kind of like this cheap, interesting 3/3 tech card, and then make Juggernaut the 5/8 that, yes, just wins a location and there's nothing you can do about it. And this is kind of an interesting hedge, right? I think that all of these would be like pretty interesting cards. I think that Juggernaut is still going to be reasonably powerful. Of course, it's going to lose a lot of stock though. It's no longer a Silver Surfer card. It's no longer a Cerebro 3 card. Both of those are huge, huge reasons to play those archetypes even, legitimately. I was playing Cerebro 3 to a lot of success over the past month or so, mostly on the back of really thinking that Juggernaut is just a fantastic card. And now you don't have access to that. Sure, maybe Juggernaut in Cerebro 5, but I'm not going to discuss all of the Cerebro implications in this video. I will say, though, that for Cerebro 3 players, the loss of Juggernaut is probably going to make me want to say Juggernaut to play that deck for right now, just because I really do feel like that was an important aspect to playing it. The Silver Surfer decks can still find other angles. They can still just put out a bunch of power. Where the Silver Surfer decks, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be worse, certainly, for sure. One deck that I think is kind of interesting to talk about with the 4/5 Juggernaut, and this is going to be a list with a 3/3 Juggernaut in it. I'm not going to edit this in, but Arishem. So, two things going on here. One is that Arishem has a little bit of extra energy, of course. And I will say, just first off, like, this deck does appreciate a 3-cost Juggernaut. Getting 2 on the final turn, play a tech card of Shang-Chi and Enchantress plus a Juggernaut is really, really insane for 7 energy. I don't want to get that wrong. However, Arishem decks don't really like playing 3-cost cards in general, at least on turn 3. You don't want to play a 3-cost card, and notably, I'm playing Iron Patriot in this Arishem list. Going from turn 2 Iron Patriot to turn 3 Juggernaut, still possible in an Arishem deck. It's definitely not a buff to Juggernaut, don't get me wrong, but it is still a place that I think Juggernaut could find a home. And if you are looking to play it, this could be one angle to do so. And another angle is like potentially in Zabu decks. I'm not sure. 4 energy is a lot, right? So I think it's going to be tough to justify Juggernaut otherwise. But I think that Zabu decks could still get away with it. Might sometimes appreciate the additional power, and yeah, just this could be a place where Juggernaut is able to still find a home, just in like these tech Zabu Surge decks, and you're getting an extra 2 points of power on it as a 4/5. Maybe that's something interesting. I don't think that that's like something that you want to be celebrating. Of course, the card is definitely significantly worse, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to go from one of the best cards in the game to a card that sees like very, very fringe play. But that can be an all right thing sometimes too, because when your opponent isn't expecting the Juggernaut, it is a lot more powerful. And right now, at the very least, if you can say one thing positive about Juggernaut, it's you got to play around it. So you do. A less common Juggernaut will be able to grab you more cubes. So that is something, and I do think that in Arishem specifically, it can probably find a home and it can find a space on the curve in those types of decks. Two other things I wanted to talk about with RSM actually real quick. The first is, you can see I threw Cosmic Ghost Rider in this deck. I think that this is a pretty solid card in RSM, and it's the new card. I think this is probably the best home for it. It doesn't seem that exciting putting a new card into an RSM deck, of course, and you could always just not play it in your RSM deck and you might wind up randomly generating it, but I think the extra energy from RSM allowing you to play Cosmic Ghost Rider on turn 4 is just pretty solid, and overall the extra energy just giving you more flexibility to play this card is pretty good. The other thing that I wanted to say about RSM, with an OTA metagame shakeup as big as this one is, I think that that actually leaves a pretty sizable gap for RSM decks to be pretty playable, because people are going to be struggling for what to play, and the overall power level is just going to go down with the best deck having a pretty big hit with the Fenris Wolf nerfs. Now, I will say there is an interesting space with this OTA in particular, with tech cards getting nerfed. That could mean that people are going to try to do some crazier things, and that might mean that RSM is not at its best. RSM is at its best when people are playing things a little bit lower to the ground, where RSM just competes naturally on points, but RSM also has access to a slew of powerful tech options that could make it a really strong choice with this OTA. Fantasticar also losing 2 points, getting a slight nerf down to a 4/5. And here is the deck that I have for Fantasticar. It is just a Fantasticar deck. I think that this deck is still going to be fine. It certainly is, any points that it's losing, and it's going to keep, losing points over time until it's not. And I don't know that this is the exact best Fantasticar deck. I just loaded up a random Fantasticar deck here, to be totally honest. But it lost some points in Havoc recently, and it lost some points... where else? Oh, I guess like Mr. Fantastic, sure. And now it's losing points in Fantasticar. These things certainly do add up. I think that this deck is probably still pretty good, and I also think it's a good thing that Fantasticar is not just like a 4/7 with upside, like same stats as the thing, but with upside, just for balance purposes. And then the thing is even driving the Fantasticar, just to add insult to injury there. But yeah, Fantasticar, I think that like this deck has seen a little bit less play recently, but it's still fine. There's still a lot of good things that people can do with Invisible Woman, and it's just seeing a little bit less play because people want to try like the cool new things. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with this still. So those are my full thoughts on Fantasticar, and now we're gonna get into some of the weirder things going on with this OTA, some of the more out there cards. And the first one is going to be Mad Thinker, which honestly, I'm not even about to show you a Mad Thinker deck. I'm about to show you, though, a deck that I do think is fun and I do like, and that is Clea. I think that Merlin and Clea are probably the best ways to be filling your hand. I don't really even know about this deck specifically, like this specific configuration of cards, and obviously Mad Thinker isn't in this list. But I do think that playing some type of like, so Clea and Merlin I think are the best ways to fill your hands. Kahori is another interesting way to like take advantage of that full hand. And if you look at this deck, it's only playing 2 1-cost cards, and then it's playing Marvel Boy, so it could afford to play another 1-cost card in it, especially with like Black Swan, right? But Black Swan is also giving you free, what are they called? Skills. Incantations or Flames of the Faltine will be free off of Black Swan. but you could also play a free Mad Thinker off of Black Swan. So there's some synergy there, and it's another card that like doesn't have an on reveal for your Werewolf by Night, so like your mileage may vary on it. I think Mad Thinker is still probably a little bit of an awkward card, and +1 power, I'm not sure if that's really going to seal the deal or push it over the edge, I guess I should say. But if you want to try something fun, I do really think that Clea is just a fun deck to play. So for no other reason, that is my recommendation. There's some weird cards getting buffed in this OTA. The next one getting buffed is Nightmare. Now I will say, and I will just throw up a random Nightmare deck on the screen here. Let me load that up. Perfect. Here we go. I don't know if this will be good or interesting. Well, I'll say I don't know if this will be good at all. I do think it will be interesting. Nightmare is nothing if not an interesting card. I think that that's correct to say. Nightmare is interesting, and it is a cool and fun card. I have not quite found anything resembling success with it. I have not tried too much with it, and I will say going from -1 power to +1 power seems like a pretty good deal for me. Now, there maybe some Nightmare enjoyers will be upset and they'll say like, oh, now I can't win bar with no name in random scenarios, or now I can't use Nightmare to toss priority super easily. And I'm sure there were some niche interactions with things like that, but this deck is going to play Shang-Chi targets, like whether it tosses priority or not, so it probably just appreciates having +1 power from Nightmare rather than getting dinged by playing this card, which is not really what it needs. So +1 power as opposed to -1 is, I think, a huge change, and yeah, I think it will potentially make me want to revisit Nightmare again, just because this is such a cool card, and I could just see, wanting to play with it a little bit more. I think that this is definitely something that needs a little more testing, I will say too. Some of my problems with Nightmare, like if we look at this list, it's just got like weird curve things, because you want to play all of these 4-cost cards with drawbacks, and then you kind of need to play Red Skull and Infinite. Like those are the hugest hits. Other than these things hitting like Shang-Chi or something, your biggest hits are like Red Skull hitting Iron Man, the Infinite hitting Arnim Zola, or hitting Galactus, potentially original Galactus, and just like totally take over the game in that way. I still think that this deck is missing some things, and I've seen like War Machine is like a backup version. This one has Sauron as a backup version, but Sauron isn't removing Infinite's ability, so that's like where War Machine comes in handy. I'm still not totally sold on it, but I do think I will give it another shot, just because it's fun, and no other reason than that. The next card that is getting a buff, right? Is this card getting +1 power? Hold on, I gotta check exactly what's happening with Silver Surfer First Steps. Okay, yeah, she is getting +1 power, but +1 power is a big deal on a card like this. I mean, we have seen cards go from best card in the game at 3/5. I'm thinking, what's the name of it? Nocturne was like one of the most ubiquitous cards in the game as a 3/5. Went down to a 3/4. They also released Copycat nearly at the same time as a replacement 3/5, and Copycat just kind of took over. But still, 3/5 is like really respectable numbers, and 3/5 on a card that specifically, so Silver Surfer First Step says, if you are winning this location with an on-reveal card, copy its text. So you have to be winning. That's what I'm building to here. This is a card that really cares about its own power. There's some cards that I think don't care as much about their own power. Valentina I would say, doesn't care as much about its own power. Iron Patriot really cares about its own power, and Silver Surfer, I think, is similar. And speaking of Iron Patriot, and also Valentina, I have these cards in front of me. That's why I was able to think about them. This is a potential Silver Surfer First Steps deck that I have not tested at all. And I will say this and also Fantasticar a little bit are somewhat above my pay grade, just because they are both from the premium season pass. So I have zero experience playing Silver Surfer First Steps at all. I do think it is a really cool card. I'm always a fan of an Absorbing Man or an Odin effect, ways to re-trigger your on reveal abilities, and that's what it's doing in this deck. There's a few interesting things that it can do specifically off the curve of Iron Patriot or Valentina to re-trigger those in a way that probably just wins you the location and re-triggers it immediately, or you can set up with a Silver Surfer into Shuri or Gwenpool. Both of those are really interesting outcomes that get you double pumps. If you are winning the location with Silver Surfer into Shuri, you are then going to double pump up a Fallen One for 20 power, which seems pretty freaking sweet. The other play that you can do there is Silver Surfer into Gwenpool, and then you throw 6 Gwen, surprises or whatever the animation is for this. I feel like it's food in some capacity, but you throw 6, chimichangas into your hand, and some of those can hit the Fallen One or Black Panther. And yeah, those also seem like pretty sweet curves, but then you also just have Iron Patriot into Silver Surfer into continue to battle for the location like Symbiote Spider-Man or Gwenpool. Symbiote Spider-Man, and then you can re-trigger either of these and just continue to battle for that location then with your cheap cards that you got from the turn 2 Iron Patriot. This deck does seem like it has a lot of interesting curves in that capacity, and I think I've got one more Silver Surfer deck here. Yes. This one is fairly straightforward. Right. That's why I wanted to show this one off. This is a Wiccan deck that does not have Fenris Wolf. So this is running Surge instead of Fenris Wolf. So there's another 2-cost card that you could potentially put in your Wiccan decks if you want to mix up the curve a little bit, and it could potentially even let you play a turn 3 Wiccan, or you can play a turn 3 Silver Surfer First Steps into a turn 4 Wiccan, and then you have +4 energy on those next 2 turns. So that is just another pretty powerful curve that you can score with Silver Surfer First Steps. Again, both of these things a little bit above my pay grade, just because I have not played with either of these cards. So I'm not claiming to be a Silver Surfer First Steps expert. I do think, though, like I said, I love an Absorbing Man effect. I think that these effects tend to be underrated by most people. Prodigy, Frigga, they had some defenders, but most people wrote them off. And these things that allow you to get multiple uses out of your build arounds always wind up eventually doing some cool stuff. And I think in the decks that I just showcased there, Silver Surfer First Steps already doing some cool stuff. I mean, already she's been out for almost a month at this point, but getting an additional point of power really, really helps her activate her own ability. And yeah, that seems really cool. I didn't even know people were doing stuff with Shuri before I put these together. So that seems really cool to me. And the next card getting some love here is America Chavez, not getting any additional power on her printed, but now her ability gives +3 power instead of +2. And I'm going to show a deck that could play America Chavez and has played America Chavez in the past. But you'll see the problem here. So this is Bounce, and you've got Toxin Falcon and Beast to get more use out of powerful on-reveal effects from your 1-cost cards. And that's kind of where the deck breaks down. And this is a deck that is fairly classic and fairly straightforward. This deck in this exact configuration won the first Golden Gauntlet, and I don't really think that you want to change anything about that. And that includes putting America Chavez into the deck. And the reason for that is Rocket Raccoon plus 4 power, Silver Sable plus 4 power, because it's stealing 2. And also, both of these cards can get played on the final turn of the game and still give you more power that turn, as opposed to America Chavez, which now Silver Sable's only a +2 on the final turn, but still America Chavez on the final turn is a +0. It is only the 2 power that it puts out onto the board. It's probably more comparable to the Hood, honestly, which gives you +6 power, but next turn, where America gives you like kind of +3 power next turn. And so despite showing this deck, and it potentially like classically being the best home for America Chavez, I don't actually think that that's the case. I think that where America probably wants to get played is alongside cards that get more value out of getting buffed up, and that deck did have some. It had Mysterio and Iron Man, which can both multiply a buff put on them. And then it also had Nico Minoru, which can work with buffs in multiple ways, because Nico can double her own power, and Nico can copy a card that you've given additional power to. So both of those ways can get additional value out of a buff, or all 3 of those cards can get additional value out of a buff from America Chavez, but I still don't think that she makes the cut in the 12 card list for those, and I think you'd probably want to be playing it alongside probably some cards that typically see play in Silver Surfer decks, cards that benefit from Gwenpool and Galacta buffs, the kind of straightforward stuff, which is like basically Brood, Mr. Fantastic, and Captain Carter, but also Mr. Sinister, also maybe Frankie Ray, Nova, like maybe. I'm not super keen on America Chavez, but I think that she's like fine, specifically in like we've seen some surferless surfer decks, and she could just be an all right 1-cost card in those decks when you are not playing Zabu. Yeah, just like an additional way to potentially get 6 power. I mean, I have to say, Mysterio being a card that does allow you to triple dip on buffs makes me think that it's like not the worst in the bounce deck that we just saw, though it is a little bit random what she is going to wind up hitting, which is kind of a problem that she's had since this rework. So I don't think that that is going to really send America's stocks up crazy. I think that there's puns I can make. We'll leave them for now, and we will discuss Ghost Spider getting 1 additional power, which I think is actually pretty big. So, 1 additional power, not always the biggest, but it is still a 50% increase in power here. And I think that there are cool Ghost Spider decks, and I want to show off one cool Ghost Spider deck right here. I'm trying to think if I want to like prelude this or not. Yeah, I'll just prelude it a little bit. I think that Ghost Spider's ability to just do what the card says it does is actually a little underrated. I think that if you get like Ghost Spider in your Arishem deck, randomly created for instance, it's pretty good to just throw your opponent off the scent based off where they think you played last turn, especially if you can yoink a Shang-Chi target to a different location, and then follow that up with still a big threat in a different location because it only costs 1 energy. The opportunity cost for Ghost Spider is super, super cheap if you can build a curve around it, either by playing a bunch of 5-cost cards or in a different way that I'll show it off here. I wanted to throw in one other thing because I just thought of Sanctum Showdown mode. I think Ghost Spider was potentially underplayed, but I saw some really, really great uses out of it where you pull the Guardian that you played last turn into the new location, and that only costs 1 energy, and then you were able to play another Guardian in that location alongside the Guardian that you're pulling, and just like be uncontestable for the Sanctum on that turn in a really powerful way. But here is a deck that I think is a lot of fun, and I don't know about the specific configuration. We see that this is a Storm War Machine Legion deck, which, hey, I mean, I think that that's fun too. But the other thing going on in here is Red Wing, which obviously has some synergy with Ghost Spider, because you can pull the Red Wing and then cheat in a big card. But the other thing that you can do is just use Ghost Spider on the final turn and potentially curve out with Electro and Blink. If you are able to Electro and then Blink that into whatever, doesn't really matter, then on the final turn you will have 7 energy, which could be enough to pull something to a different location and then also play Galactus in the other location. And yeah, that just seems really powerful to me, and this deck is also a lot of fun. So definitely worth checking out. That is deck number 10. Hopefully this was an interesting look at the changes that are coming with this OTA and gave you some inspiration for what you can play today in Marvel Snap. But for today, for this video, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace. To enter into my giveaway, there are 3 things that you need to do. The first is subscribe to this YouTube channel. The second is leave a comment on any of my videos. This season, every comment will give you an additional entry into the giveaway. Limit 1 per video, but you can comment on all of the videos that I upload throughout this season. And the third thing that you have to do is join my Discord. And the reason that I need you to do that is so that way I can contact you if you win, because YouTube comments, you don't always get the notifications for things like that. So join my Discord, leave a comment on all of my videos, and subscribe for more sweet Marvel Snap.